there, Mama. I'm Courtney Cecil, proud mom of two boys and an organizational culture and behavior change executive. And I'm a believer in building a movement to help the burned out, overwhelmed working moms reclaim their control and free time so they can confidently remain in the workforce without losing their sanity or themselves. Now, let's get started. Hey y'all, I'm your host, Courtney Cecil, and welcome back to the Life Management System. So, this is episode part 3 of 3, intended to help you get really organized for the school year. I want you to be able to use this time to reset and completely recalibrate so that you feel more in control and you feel more aligned with how you are spending your time. So, inside this snack size episode, we're going to focus on resetting your time at work. Part of that is time related, part of it is calendar related. All of it's really important to make sure you are focused on the most important things. So, what I do want to caveat though is this isn't about optimizing your time. There's a time and place we can have that conversation. It needs to be an entire episode in itself. We would be here for an extra hour. This is more just about identifying the waste that you have in the way that you're spending your time. So the first thing though, I want to be really clear on because I want you having this lens as you listen to this and as you go through your day. And that's around you need to be super clear on what you're being measured by. Like at the end of the performance year, when your boss says, "Hey, this is how you did against X, Y, and Z goals." What are those goals? And it's really hard when they're not quantitative. Like my husband, Richard, is in banking, and most particularly, he's in sales for the commercial middle market. And those sales goals are very quantitative. He either hits them or he doesn't, and he knows exactly how he's doing based on those goals. It's a little bit harder for most of us, but having a clear conversation with your boss to know how he or she is going to evaluate you at the end of the year can help be your compass in informing whether or not you're spending your time on the right things or whether or not you're giving yourself away for free, which I did a lot. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that below in the episode because I do think it's an important concept for women in particular to be conscientious of because we definitely have a tendency of giving ourselves away for free. So as you listen, apply the lens of, am I being evaluated against this regarding my performance? And that should be able to guide you. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at the highest level and we're going to zoom out because there are things that you can reassess and the way that you do them in order to inform things you probably should stop doing. So take notice if you have meetings on your calendar that are unproductive continuously, like chronic meetings, because they have no agenda or no clear purpose, or they are not driving towards a specific outcome, or they're just like stale and reoccurring out of habit because it's the way you've been doing things for a while, or if it's something that could be easily replaced with a shared document or video recording. That's a big one. Most corporate teams use Teams, Microsoft Teams. There's a lot of Teams all in one sentence. And Teams just rolled out a new function that works very similar to Loom, where you can record something on your computer and share with somebody. So that's another really easy way to collaborate where you don't actually have to set a meeting in order to bring someone along on your journey. Okay, the other evaluation criteria. Consider whether you're spending time on busy work. So things like checking your email as it comes in. And like that's the real time checking, especially before your own priorities are cared for. I am working with several of my clients on staying super focused on putting their first things first. Like when you get into the office every day, are you doing those core critical items that weigh on your shoulders that you know if you don't get them done, you're going to spend your evenings doing them? Those are the kind of things you need to be doing worse or first before you check your email. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't triage and like quickly mentally assess everything in there to see whether there are any burning issues. Like I don't want a email sitting in my inbox from my boss's boss or the head of a function or a urgent client. I don't want anything that's truly urgent or priority sitting there. But for the most case, like I'm willing to bet most of y'all have an inbox full of 90 to 95% of the things that aren't actually considered urgent. So do the quick triage and then get to your own items. The next thing that we tend to spend busy work on is over engineering decks for internal purposes. Like if all you are doing is putting that in front of a boss or a peer group or something of that nature, or even your own team, do enough by all means to be effective communicator and to bring people along in whatever you are trying to communicate. But that is very different than over engineering to create the most perfect deck. I came from consulting. It's what we did. I swear I majored in deck creation and it's miserable, by the way. But one of the reasons I thought it was miserable is because it just felt like such a waste of time. I would love to have created the most beautiful, perfect decks every time, but who's got time for that? Like, I want to actually further the thinking and make an impact, not spend all of this time creating the absolute perfect presentation that only a handful of people are going to see. It's just not worth my time. The next thing you might be wasting time on is triple checking low risk items. Again, there will be things that will be very visible you do or have high risk related to them because the quality control matters a lot. But if you're not in that role or it's not that task, it's time you probably double check and then you let the triple check go. Like, let that go. It is absolutely not worth it. Move things forward. And then last, be super clear that the things you're doing, once again, are those things you are being measured by. That is what, at the end of the performance year, you are ultimately being evaluated by. Those are the conversations that your boss is going to care most about. Because guess what? That's probably what he or she is being evaluated by as well. Those are the things on their scorecard, which is why they have to be that much more attentive to making sure their DRs are doing that. Okay, so moving on then, let's talk about when your workload is not commensurate with where you are in life or what you are being compensated by. So that's the big one for me is that women in particular have a tendency to do things that they're not being compensated for and that they're not actually accountable for. And I was 120% guilty of that in one of my last roles. I just came from banking where I was leading culture and engagement at a Fortune 50. But before that, I was with the same firm for 16 years. I worked for a couple different CEO administrations. I loved that company so much and I cared so deeply about it. And I gave myself away for free a lot. I was not compensated for doing half the stuff I was. And it was just, it was my time. It was my time I was giving away. And I didn't fully appreciate that until I lost my job there. My entire function was eliminated. I went out with it. It was a very, very hard lesson for me. So I am hoping that you, my dear friends, as women yourself, listen to some of what I'm about to share with you because I promise you men are not doing this. These are traps that women specifically find themselves in. So, first thing, don't raise your hand for extra credit projects that are outside your role. Now, if it's something you're really passionate about, really excited about, or can help prepare you for the next leg of your journey and your career progression, sure, by all means. But if it doesn't serve one of those purposes or feel like check one of those boxes, just don't do it. So I used to raise my hand for everything. And that made sense at one point in my career, particularly right out of college. I mean, that's half of what got me the attention that helped me move up in my career as quickly as I did. I was moving faster than essentially anybody that was out of school at the same time as me. It worked for me then. But now with kids, now as busy as I am, I mean, I had my boys, I had a second job trying to stand up working moms movement, that sort of thing. I just couldn't afford to raise my hand for extra credit projects that you only really do for yourself. You don't get extra credit on those at the end of the performance year. They say you do. I mean, how many times have you really gotten compensated for that extra thing you took on? Most likely, not at all. The other thing that a lot of women tend to do is they overfunction for others. And the way that this specifically showed up for me is around my direct reports. So, what I mean by that is I would do things that I should have been giving away for them. And I had the gift of one of my old direct reports tell me, Courtney, I need you to create the gap. And what she meant by that, so like backtrack, every single performance year when I was evaluating and talking through my team, what their growth opportunities were, I would always ask the question like, hey, how can I show up better for you? How can I show up better for myself? Where is the spinach in my teeth? What are my blind spots? Help me be more effective. And one of my teammates took that request very seriously as she took everything. And she did that out of respect to me and our relationship because she really cared about me and my success. And she came back to our one on one when we were talking about her performance review. And she said, okay, I really reflected on what it is that I think you can do to be even more effective. And I think you need to create a gap. And she continued to say, when she reflected on where she grew the most in her career, it was often because there was a big gap between what the person above her was doing and what she had to do. So it forced her to grow into that gap. And it first forced her to figure things out. And she said, Courtney, you are so invested in us and our success and not feeling like we're alone that you're in the muck with us. And what that's doing is for sure it's making us feel supported, but it's not allowing us a space to grow into it. So I was totally over functioning for them in ways that hurt my own capacity, but it also damaged their ability to grow into the roles themselves. And it was a lose-lose. So I really appreciated that feedback from her and took it to heart and realized how much more capacity I got after that by creating that gap for others. The other ways that people tend to overfunction for their direct reports is in redoing their team's work or allowing that scope creep to happen. I mean, for me too, the other thing I used to do is instead of giving my teammates the work that came in last minute because I felt too guilty, I would take it on myself. But that's part of the game. I mean, sometimes I would win, sometimes they would win, but I would take on their responsibilities instead of putting it back on them. And because I was doing that over and over and over, I was taking my last minute stuff. I was owning my boss's last minute stuff. I was owning my teammates' last minute stuff. And that wasn't fair to me because the only person that lost there was me. And if I was a lot more intentional about not taking on things for others, I would have gotten a lot more time back in my life. Okay, another thing that women are somewhat guilty of is going above and beyond in the interest of building their brand. And I going out on a limb here and saying I'm willing to bet that women of color feel that pressure even more based on some of the conversations I've had. And I think it's just because we feel like we have to do things perfect. And it's such a double standard because men do not feel that pressure, but we feel like if we are not showing up our best self, then that will be held against us. And that's just such unfair pressure that we're putting on ourselves. Yes, of course, there is some degree of that, but that's where we have the opportunity as women to grant each other grace and to lift each other up and lean in and say, you know what? You go, girl. You did awesome. And who cares if it is their best self, their absolute best self, or a good enough self? Because good enough is good enough. We are inherently good enough just by doing the basics. So, to the degree that you can let go of some of that pressure of trying to build your brand, I think it's going to help you be able to put some boundaries in place and be able to breathe a lot easier. And the last thing that women have a tendency to do is spin up work that nobody's asking them to do. And I was the ultimate guilty one of that. And not only did it hurt me, it hurt my team too. Because when I saw opportunities, I would chase them. I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's going to be so fun. We're going to be heroes. That's awesome. And I came from a place that was very entrepreneurial and they let you do that. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, there were some really great projects that came out of it. But for the most part, we were spinning up work for the sake of spinning it up that didn't have real sponsorship, that nobody was asking us to do. And that was an opportunity I had to really reevaluate how much time I was actually wasting. And you better believe when I left that company and went into banking, I never made that mistake again. If I didn't have sponsorship and didn't have my boss or my boss's boss directly asking for something, I was not doing it. Okay, so let's talk about reevaluating your meetings. This is pretty simple and straightforward, probably not rocket science, but just a reminder that it's a healthy time to reset. So, do you happen to have weekly syncs on your calendar that have no real purpose? Okay, if so, why? Question that. Do you happen to have one-on-one check-ins that could be biweekly instead of weekly, or could be done over Messenger every other week or something of that nature? Okay, if so, there's an opportunity. Do you happen to have standing team meetings where you are either not adding value or you're not learning anything? Potentially another opportunity. So take a look at any of those particularly reoccurring meetings, and maybe you have opportunity there to reset. Okay, moving on, let's talk about work and other low impact tasks that can throw our day completely sideways. And this goes back to the other category of women tend to be most guilty of these. So, again, remember, this was me to a T in my last company. Please do not let yourself fall into these traps. The first is around real-time inbox messaging and triaging. I talked about this earlier. Make sure you're putting your first things first. And then even once you've gotten your first things done, just try to find a couple times a day where you can get to your inbox as opposed to real-time processing as things come in. And same with your messenger. If anybody's needing to get you urgently, I promise they're going to pick up the phone if it's that urgent. The next thing, women, ding, ding, ding. This is something we do. Planning committees, like the party planning committee. Remember The Office for anybody that watched that? Um, the women tend to be the ones that get stuck doing the party planning committee or volunteering to facilitate other office events or recruiting events or something of that nature. Again, unless it's a passion area of yours, please, please, please try to let somebody that is younger, that has less responsibility going on, take that on. It is not for you to do. Another thing, over preparing when the stakes are low. That could be in the form of a presentation. That could be over preparing for a meeting. By all means, I want you to show up looking your best. I really care about my brand and spend a lot of time on that too. But there is a difference between preparing so you can be productive and over preparing. So make sure that you're walking that line instead of over preparing. Okay, the next, solving tasks that your direct leadership did not ask you to do. So, again, that is the concept of giving yourself away for free. Please don't do that. Don't chase down work either that others should be owning in the interest of being helpful. So, when somebody emails and asks, hey, does anybody know this or can anybody do this? Just let it sit there. If it's not yours to answer, let somebody else step in and respond. Or let somebody whose actual responsibility it is track it down themselves instead of you taking ownership for something they ultimately need to be accountable for. And then last, this is a tricky one, but still consumes a lot of us. We show up to all the optional webinars or town halls or that sort of thing. Is there a way that somebody else can give you the cliff notes? Is there a way you can listen to the repeat on 2 times the speed? And by the way, if it doesn't actually serve your role, then don't do it. And I know that's simpler said than done, but we tend to spend a lot of time on transitioning to and attending and transitioning off those meetings when we really don't get a ton of value out of them. So maybe be a little bit more critical on that as well. Okay, last, most women know when they're weighed down by the mental load and that we carry a lot of that mental load. But unfortunately, particularly as it relates to work, we might do some of that ourselves. Like at home, it's easy to blame our male partners as the ones who are not helping us there. And uh, I get that. That's a completely different issue. But at work, we actually tend to be the ones that are doing it to ourselves. So answer these questions again, all rhetorical. Are you always being the first responder to everyone's quote unquote quick questions? If you are, it's probably something that you are doing to yourself. Are you doing that unpromotable work, like taking notes or sending follow-ups or anything that actually isn't recognized, like the party planning committee? Are you taking responsibility for personal development of others that they are either not doing for themselves. Maybe it's even something more formal like a mentorship or committee that no longer aligns with you. So, like personnel development should set with others if it doesn't make sense for you, and it will only benefit the other people too. So that could be another. And then last, over functioning to compensate for someone else's disorganization. That could be your direct reports, it could be a peer, it could be a distant teammate. But again, that tends to be something that women specifically own in ways that men do not. Okay, time to bring this home. If you haven't read, by the way, my top 10 time wasters, it may give you some ideas on some of those blind spots that you have. It is certainly not going to be comprehensive. It is more just to remind you that there are things that you probably don't know you're wasting time on that are mental or more strategic. And just giving that a listen might trigger some ideas. So I will include the link to be able to get that in the show notes. But for now, that's a wrap. And I just am really grateful that you have been on this 3-part series with me. I hope it leaves you in a place of power and gave you some things to think about regarding opportunities you have to put your best foot forward at the start of the school year. And I hope that your transition is successful for both you and your kids. Here in Charlotte Metro, we start on Monday. I'm really excited about it, but I'm also excited to squeeze one fourth and final beach trip into the summer. I have actually weirdly gone to a different beach every time. We went to Pawleys Island in May, then Deborah, which is in Pawleys Island, in July, and then Amelia Island we just got back from, and now I am going to visit my friend's house in Sunset Beach in North Carolina. And just very grateful, I guess, to live in Charlotte where beaches are a quick drive. Obviously grateful to have friends who have beach houses that I can do and visit. Anyway, thanks for being here. And until next time, friends, if nobody's told you lately, you're doing a great job. You've got this, mama. Hey friend, thanks for tuning in. Add the Life Management System podcast to your favorites so you don't miss my practical, snack-sized tips to help you manage the mental load and create a life that works for you. If we're not yet connected on Instagram, come say hi at Working Moms Movement for daily inspiration. And if this is your 3rd or 10th time listening, it's time you bless the small business. Share this episode with another working mom in the thick of it and take 30 seconds to rate and review. It helps more than you know. And if you're ready to go from surviving to thriving and make your day-to-day actually sustainable, email me at Courtney@workingmomsmovement.com. Mention this podcast for 25% off my coaching services. I also speak and host workshops for organizations that want to support working parents from the inside out. Reach out if you think yours is ready. This has been the Life Management System, your shortcut to less chaos and more calm. And here's your reminder to keep managing your life instead of letting it manage you.